5 o'clock with the latest update on the pandemic in Oregon. There is some promising news to tell you as deaths and hospitalizations drop. But at the same time, more young people are still dying from the virus. Pat Doris reports.
At Salem Hospital, 96 patients have COVID. Of those, 21 are in the intensive care unit and 10 are on ventilators. Doctors like Marty Johnson, the ICU medical director, say the battle is far from over.
So it's about the same, maybe a little bit less than it was a week ago, but still way above our normal.
The hospital is caring for and sometimes losing COVID patients now that are younger than in earlier surges. September 14th, a 47-year-old died here from COVID. The day before that, a 24-year-old died. And the day before that, a 33-year-old died. It's brutal for everyone.
Oh, it's horrible. We've actually lost a 20-year-old as well at one point. Those patients, since they're relatively young and lots of times don't have a lot of chronic, morbid conditions, unfortunately, they tend to linger and battle longer in the ICU and on respiratory support.
He said nearly all those dying are not vaccinated, and many of the younger patients have other medical conditions that make them more vulnerable to the Delta variant. They also often are connected to young families.
We're dealing with oftentimes families that are more desperate. We're dealing oftentimes with very young children involved with the family. So it's very hard on the staff, very hard on everybody involved.
Despite that, there are glimmers of hope statewide. For the week of September 6th through the 12th, the Oregon Health Authority reports 12,997 new cases. That's a bunch, but it's down 11% from the week before. 592 people were hospitalized with COVID during that time, also down from more than 1,000 the prior week. And 120 people died, but the week before, the virus killed 171 in Oregon. All of it an improvement, and all of it still gut-wrenching for everyone, including the state epidemiologist, Dr. Dean Seidlinger.
Every morning, I sit with the new data from the day before. Sometimes I cry. Sometimes I get angry because much of the disease we're seeing now is preventable, and I wonder, what could I have done to reach even one more person to get vaccinated and take steps to protect themselves?
He again urged everyone to get vaccinated and bluntly spelled out the risk of not being protected from the COVID virus.
Unvaccinated people are getting sick. Unvaccinated people are being hospitalized. And unvaccinated people are dying at rates far higher than those who are vaccinated.
Pat Doris, KGW News.
The COVID situation in Idaho has deteriorated to the point that the entire state now is rationing health care. The Idaho Department of Health and Welfare made this announcement this morning amid a massive surge in hospitalized COVID patients. Crisis standards of care are now in effect statewide. Here's what that means. It means that scarce resources like ICU beds, for instance, are given now to patients most likely to survive. Patients with worse odds are treated with less effective methods. The Crisis Standards of Care activation came at the request of St. Luke's Health System, the largest hospital network in Idaho.
If we continue on this course over the next several weeks, St. Luke's Health System will become a COVID health system. We will consume every single bed and every single resource we have with COVID patients in our hospital. Our ICUs are not only full, they're overflowing. The vast majority of our patients in our intensive care units are COVID positive. 98% of them are unvaccinated.
Idaho is one of the least vaccinated states. Individual hospital systems in Alaska and Montana have also enacted similar crisis standards. Today, more than 3,000 students in the Portland metro area are staying home from class after 2 schools announced large-scale quarantines this week. Christine Pitawanich has the details.
The 2 schools in quarantine are an elementary school in the Gladstone School District and one of the largest high schools in Oregon in the Reynolds School District.
What's happening actually at Reynolds High School is that we had a few COVID cases with students. While we didn't have that many, the issue was the amount of students that we had to quarantine were a lot.
That's Steve Padilla with the Reynolds School District. He says out of precaution and also because it would be too difficult for teachers to split up teaching in person and online, the decision was made to quarantine all of the roughly 2,600 students attending Reynolds High. Next week, they'll start distance learning.
And the reason why we have no school today or tomorrow is to give the teachers time to prep for the distance learning. And so we're giving them a couple days. The students all have their devices.
Meantime, 20 miles away in the Gladstone School District, one staff member who was vaccinated and masked tested positive. They had contact with many students, resulting in the quarantine of an entire school.
Due to a widespread COVID-19 exposure at John Letton Elementary, all of our students in grades 1 through 5 have been put on quarantine at home. The quarantine happened not because of COVID cases, but because of the exposure. The staff member became aware of symptoms during the middle of the school day.
How many kids are we talking about?
I believe it's 620.
Gladstone School's spokesperson Leslie Robinette says Thursday and Friday will be spent distributing laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots. Teachers will prepare. Then distance learning starts next week. Students at both schools will come back to school in person after 10 days on the 27th.
It's an operational shutdown. We're changing up a few procedures so that way, if it does happen in the future, we're better prepared and less students have to quarantine.
Both districts are now looking at additional ways to protect students and staff. The Reynolds School District will be asking parents to voluntarily submit their students' vaccination status and plans to better track seating in classrooms and on the bus. In the Gladstone School District, there are plans to upgrade air filtration systems that'll provide hospital-grade air quality. Christine Pedawanich, KGW News.
As the University of Oregon students get ready to go back for the fall term, some are saying they're noticing classes that were supposed to be in person are switching to remote. One senior city got an email from a professor last week saying their class would now be online.
I think as an employee of a university, you shouldn't have to be forced to put your neck on the line or your safety on the line just for the comfortability of your students. I feel like your safety should also be considered as an employee, as well as the safety of other students.
Overall, university officials say things will mostly look similar to before the pandemic on campus, and that only 5% of classes will be online. When students first registered, the online classes were marked. However, officials did say for every term there may be a small number of cases where they have to change plans. When it comes to COVID vaccine mandates, one possible exemption involves religious reasons. But what exactly does that entail? Catherine Cook talked to a law professor about how religious exemptions may or may not hold up.
A growing number of people are claiming religious reasons to dodge COVID vaccine mandates. In Washington, thousands of state workers are doing it. And in Los Angeles, some 2,600 police department employees are citing religion to avoid the shot. So is religion just a loophole here?
First of all, the legal landscape is very complicated.
To learn more, we talked with Lewis and Clark Law School professor Jim Oleski. First, some interesting background. Oleski says before these vaccine mandates, most religious exemption claims came up behind bars.
This often comes up in prison litigation cases where, say someone who's never been a practicing Jewish person in the past suddenly says they want kosher meals. Well, the court has to decide, did they really convert to Judaism, or are they asking for the kosher meals because the kosher meal is coming into the prison from the outside and other prisoners aren't, handling it?
Where religion is concerned, Oleski says the same question applies to vaccine exemptions. Are the beliefs behind them sincere?
Traditionally, courts are very reluctant to second guess religious claims, but they do test sincerity.
Employers could test sincerity by comparing religious claims with what an employee might post on social media.
That's one way of proving it, is people have actually said their real basis, and then they come in and they say it's about religion.
And while it's one thing to question the sincerity of one's religious claims, Oleski says it's another thing entirely to suggest they're unreasonable.
When it gets to court, they're going to be in a lot of trouble because courts are going to say it was illegitimate, especially if it's a government employer, to be engaging in questioning the reasonableness of a particular religious belief.
So where does that leave us? First of all, Oleski believes under current Supreme Court precedent, vaccine mandates hold up. And he says even traditional supporters of religious exemptions may view things differently through the lens of a global pandemic.
If your religion believes in human sacrifice, you don't have a right to kill people and be exempt from the homicide laws. Likewise, many of these people would say, yes, I believe there's religious exemption rights to most laws, but when it's a deadly pandemic, you don't have an exemption from the vaccination requirement.
Catherine Cook, KGW News.
Developing tonight, police are investigating a shooting in the city's Madison South neighborhood. It happened this afternoon near Northeast 82nd and Failing Street. 2 people were shot, 1 adult and 1 teen. They are expected to survive. A car was also hit. Police have closed off 82nd between Sandy and Failing Street. Traffic is being diverted as officers investigate. The Oregon Department of Justice announced today that a former Tigard police officer will not face charges in a deadly shooting from earlier this year. This stems from the death of Jacob McDuff on January 6th. Officers were trying to arrest him for domestic harassment. They said he had a knife during the arrest attempt and refused to drop it. He was shot during the struggle. The officer involved left the Tigard Police Department a few months later. Now that the outside investigation is done, Tigard police plan to start an internal review of the shooting. With potentially heavy rain in the forecast this weekend, ODOT is getting ready to protect the roads. They say there hasn't been substantial rainfall since June, and what that means is that the rain will most likely lift up the oil and grime that's on the roads, making them very slick. They've also put precautions in place to prevent slides and erosion, especially in areas burned out by wildfires. That includes places like Highway 126 in the McKenzie Valley, where the Holiday Farm fire burned last year.
The McKenzie Bridge maintenance crews are going to have somebody on call this weekend just to help in case, culverts and stuff get plugged. Loaders have already been positioned at their shop with dump trucks and the equipment needed if we were to get any slides or anything like that.
As for landslides, one advantage this year is that some vegetation has actually started to grow back after the fires, which helps stabilize the soil. As crews have removed hazardous trees, also they've been working to protect soil from heavy rain or snow events.